Hi guys, it's Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zickery of Space Command. Lots of great things are happening, and I'll tell you about them next time. But three people have passed in the last few weeks, and I wanted to comment about that because I've been thinking a lot about it. And here's the thing about our lives in general. There are people who come into our lives who make our lives better and make us better. And they can be people in our families, people who are our friends, people that we work with or study with. They can be on television, film, comic books, etc. And these are three people who certainly left their impression on me, and I wanted to talk about that. They are, of course, Chadwick Boseman, Diana Rigg, and someone less well known, Susan Ellison. And let's just dive in. So, all of us, of course, were shocked by the passing of Chadwick Boseman at only 43. He is, of course, the star of Black Panther and many other fine films. And I'm really glad that we work in a medium, film and TV, where what we do outlasts us. I mean, I'd like to stay here. I don't particularly want to outlast me, but but we get to see the work that we do, particularly if it's work that is superlative. And Chadwick Boseman with Black Panther created something that was unique and the first of its kind. I happen to own the first comic book where Black Panther appeared. It's a Fantastic Four issue that I prize. But I remember all of my friends who were African Americans, having parties where they went to Black Panther to watch it again and again and again. And I think it was because, I grew up in where at best the black character might be the sidekick or the hero's buddy or the heroine's best friend talking about her romance, or, and in science fiction movies they would always get killed. and it was just this message that they weren't, or the stories would be overtly about race, but in a way that was sort of like, oh, we're going for a march or going to sit at the lunch counters, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that is certainly limiting if that's the only story you tell. And one of the great turning points for me was Independence Day, where the two heroes were a black guy who didn't get killed, Will Smith, and a Jewish guy who was overtly Jewish. There are so many actors who were Jewish where you didn't know that, and they so like Spock, who knows that Spock is Jewish? Who knew Rod Serling was Jewish? Who knew Jack Benny? All of these different wonderful talented people. But this was a character who was Jewish, and that was terrific. He had a father who was Jewish. It was just really nice. And so Black Panther, it was a hero and a story and his family and his enemies, and it was in Africa, and the design sense was African, and it was proud, and it was unapologetic. And it was sort of like, here's this cool story. And for those of us who draw our great fantasies and self-images from film and TV and books, when you see someone who seems like yourself, or a better version of yourself, it's validating. And so I absolutely understand why this film had such power for black audiences, and I applaud it. And I'm glad that Chadwick Boseman got to play that role and knew when he died that he had done something that really, really, really mattered. So I'm sorry about his passing, but I'm really glad he left his mark. And then, of course, there's Diana Rigg. And again, this goes back to seeing people in film and TV who are strong and proud and themselves. And the great thing about Diana Rigg, I first saw her in the Avengers when I was a kid, and she was just spectacular as Emma Peel. There's no other way of saying it. She was powerful and physical and sexy and attractive and smart. It was a great role, and she was spectacular in it. She was amazing in it. And for all the women who saw that show, they could see that they could be smart and sexy and powerful and all of those things, that it wasn't a choice of either or, where you had to be pretty and retiring and not open your mouth and not have opinions. She was very strong, very appealing, And it was just a great show, and she was terrific in it. And then, of course, it's really neat that at the end of her life, she could be in Game of Thrones and again play a brilliant and very different role. She was, Game of Thrones screwed up the ending spectacularly, I thought. You can see how I would have ended Game of Thrones on another Mr. Sci-Fi video if you just type in Game of Thrones. But her character, they set her up well, they played her well, and they gave her a great exit. So she was sort of hermetically sealed, and because her character ended before the show ended, she wasn't sort of tainted by that very poor ending. So I was really glad to see her in that role. Though it's astonishing when you see her as a young woman, how different she looked as an older woman, and she talked about that in interview shows about in middle years deciding whether or not to try to stay a sex symbol, as some actresses do, or to just be herself and be an actress and perform roles that interested her and so forth. And so she chose the latter, and she also took 10 years off from her career to raise her children, and again she led an admirable life and really left a body of work behind that is singular and wonderful. So if you haven't ever seen her in the Avengers, check it out. You'll really love it, and it's one of a kind, and she's one of a kind. And then finally we get to the third person, Susan Ellison. And when we talk about people who change us, Susan Ellison was the wife of Harlan Ellison, the amazing science fiction writer, who started as an enfant terrible and then I guess became whatever an old terrible would be. But he was one of the great writers of science fiction. He was more than any other writer. I think he influenced me in terms of my career and how I moved through the world. And I knew him well, and he was in ill health in the last few years of his life, and I did a very lengthy Mr. Sci-Fi on him when he passed a couple of years ago, and he was in his 80s, so it was expected, But Susan was only 60, and she died in her sleep a few weeks back, and I was very, very shocked to hear it, because I'd been actually planning to discuss doing a Harlan Ellison series for the Showrunners Network with her. We'd actually had preliminary conversations about getting together, and then the pandemic hit, and I feel very sad that we will not be able to continue moving forward on that. But the neat thing about Susan was she was married to Harlan for some like 30 years, a long time, and before Harlan met her, he would just like burn through relationships, and whenever you hear him talking about a girlfriend or whatever, it was always with a very derogatory feeling. It was always very that he was sort of superior and they were just kind of, he was going through them like tissue paper, and he had kind of, he stood up for the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment for women, and that was good for him. But the way he treated his girlfriends and so forth, the way he talked about them, and just basically his attitude seemed very arrogant and off-putting. And then he met Susan, and Susan was really lovely and smart, and she didn't take bullshit from him. She just gave as good as she got, and he just adored her. And his whole way of speaking about women in general, and Susan in particular, became one of respect. And she calmed him. She didn't tame him. He was not tameable, but it was a great marriage, and she was a great match to him. And in fact, I have a photo of them on my wall together, and it's just an incredibly loving photo. And I'm very sad to see her go, but she really came into Harlan's life and made a major, major difference for the better. And everyone liked her. I never heard a bad word about her, and I liked her very much too. And the last time we talked, she said, "Don't be a stranger," and I certainly didn't want to be. I wanted to continue to have her in my life, and so that's really a sad thing. And that's the way it goes. That's why we need to tell people we care about them now, to not assume there'll be a tomorrow, and to really value the people we have and cherish them. And I value you guys. I cherish you guys, and I appreciate your watching my Mr. Sci-Fi videos. And if you want to contribute to Patreon or buy Space Command shares, please do. But I value you whether or not. And And here we are. So I'll be talking a lot more about various science fiction things shortly, including Space Command and Sweet Haven and the book I'm writing and Kilgore Trout and Stanislaw Lem and on and on and on and on and on. And so that's it for now. But I'm really glad that all of us get to know people who change us and make us better people. We are pack animals, we humans, and thankfully dogs are too, so they hang out with us, and that makes our lives better too. But that's it for now. We'll talk again real soon, but just a tip of the hat to Chadwick Boseman and Diana Rigg and Susan Ellison and Harlan, of course, and all the other dear friends now and past. And we'll talk again real soon. Take care, guys. Bye.